OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate. Niggas don't know what to think. Thought I get money, you change. What you thought we was the same? Still stay away from them clones. Niggas better leave me alone. Talking about niggas as though you run with niggas who don't know you. Whoa, I made that zagging when city to city. You niggas not hot in your state. If it was money to get a hit Henny, we get it and never complain. Same go for the gang, and we split it up all the same. I can't really eat, let's stay straight, cause we go way back in the day. My day ones from back in the day, they still hang around me today. You wanna come round us, you can't. I'm rolling up loud, it's great. But mama, she bad but complain, cause I'm too in love with my dreams. And I gotta get on the plane, and go get this money with Kenji. I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang.
I get the bag with the gang, taking that Zach to the bank. Henny be all in my drink. You niggas is stupid, you think that should change? You not even hot in your gang. Ain't nothing even hot about your gang. You niggas be lying about same. Be posting them pictures of guns for the fame. Niggas just look at me different now. Say that's your man, but he a clown. Don't fuck around with the fuck arounds. Little nigga, you should cut it out. Me and my niggas take different routes. Punch a bitch nigga all in his mouth. Hold up my nigga, we different now. I need a raw, this is my style. I get a check today, I spent it all tomorrow. I get a bitch today, she probably a foreign model. I get a check today, I spent it all tomorrow. I'm with my gang today, tomorrow never promise.
OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang.
Your attention, please. Please do not smoke in the terminal building. Smoking is only permitted in the specified smoking areas.
Zach.
Thank you.
OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate. Niggas don't know what to think. Thought I get money, you change. What you thought we was the same? Still stay away from them clones. Niggas better leave me alone. Talking about niggas as though you run with niggas who don't know you. Whoa, I made that zagging when city to city. You niggas not hot in your state. If it was money to get a hit Henny, we get it and never complain. Same go for the gang, and we split it up all the same. I can't really eat, let's stay straight, cause we go way back in the day. My day ones from back in the day, they still hang around me today. You wanna come round us, you can't. I'm rolling up loud, it's great. But mama, she bad but complain, cause I'm too in love with my dreams. And I gotta get on the plane, and go get this money with Kenji. I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with
I think I'm cute. I know I'm sexy. I've got the look, that drives the girls while I got the moves that really move them. I send chills up and down their spines. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I make them hot. I make them shiver. They just get weak whenever I'm around and see me walk. They hear me talk. I make them feel like their God ain't real. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. Let's go. That mic flip though.
Hands off the merchandise.
I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. Welcome everybody to another edition of Late Night Counter Apologetics. I am your host with the most, all the way from the East Coast. And as always, folks, I am in airplane mode. We've got a fantastic show for you on tonight's Spartan Strong Saturday night edition of Late Night Counter Apologetics. I am, of course, joined by the gang here at 30 Myron Plaza, ready to do what we do best, and that is some straight up counter apologetics. So don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and please, please, for the love of atheist non-God, would you please share the channel? Because I don't know if you've noticed, I didn't get one of them big fancy Super Bowl fucking commercials. I don't really get a lot of love on ESPN or anything like that. Fucking YouTube isn't putting my shit all over the front page of the interwebs when people come to look for videos of cats playing piano. So I rely on users like you to help spread the good word of what we have going on in this community. Now let's go ahead and get into it. Before we get things started, we need to have our communion. I am not slacking on my priestly duties. I gets it done. All right, now let's go ahead. Please raise your glasses and hang on to your asses. Through him, with him, in the unity of the flying man. All glory and honor is yours who flied for our sins forever and ever. You may drink. Oh, yeah. All right, that is our communion hymn. Let's go ahead and get into our communion song. It comes to us courtesy of Foy Vance. It is the theme song for our community. It is called Where Everybody Knows Your Name.
Dublin, and he's going to play us out. Foy, you're going to play what to finish us up?
Do you know what? I don't know the name of this song, actually, but I know the song, and so will you.
Oh, look forward to this. Foy Vance, take it away.
Making your way in the world today takes everything you got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. Wouldn't you like to get away? Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name. And they're always glad you came. You wanna be where you can see troubles are all the same. You wanna go where everybody knows your name. Well, all those nights when you got no lights and the check is in the mail, and your little angel on the collared by its tail. Your third fiancé didn't show.
All right, look at the trees was first. Thank you.
Well, sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows your name. And you're always glad they came.
Was second. I don't even know who that is.
You wanna be where you can see troubles are all the same. You wanna go where.
Yep, but Cameron, you fucked up. Now you're getting pocket change on your second account. You're finally not fourth, but you logged in with the wrong account. I'm not giving that pocket change to Cameron Bennett. That's KB Fit 2.0 pocket change.
Isn't looking bright.
You had to log back in just to redeem that shit.
And he doesn't even write. Your girlfriend says she's not a girl. Be glad there's one place in the world where everybody knows your name. And they're always glad you came. You wanna be where you can see troubles are all the same.
All right, I gotta look at the trees. KB Fit, Germania, YouTube,
You wanna be where you can see
Cameron Bennett, Sabracadabra,
you wanna go where
Tang,
everybody knows your
UC
name.
Love, Stephanie Helms, Jen is in here. Pragmatic Crystal, Maya
Foy Vance.
Atkinson.
Most common word coming in by text, Foy, is goosebumps. Believe it or not, we've had that repeatedly across the whole series. If you want to see Foy Vance's cheeky grin when
Good
he
to
sang
see
the
everybody here.
line,
Liz
when you
Allen
find
is
your
in the
girlfriend is a
house.
guy, you can go on the website. We'll upload a video of Foy singing that. If you want to see him live, 6th of December in Rochestown, Galway, 7th of December in Whelan's in Dublin, and the new album is Joy of Nothing. Foy.
I'm taking the gloves off. All right, now, gang, look, believe it or not, tonight's topic, the topic I've been kind of on this weekend, I believe is a very important one. And the idea is compassion poisoning. It's basically programming from within and without. In other words, from your external environment and also the things that we tell ourselves about who we should be and how we want others to see us and how we should act, that it is one thing to be compassionate for other people, to put yourself in their shoes, to demonstrate some sympathy, some empathy, to feel bad for others in difficult situations. But the idea with compassion poisoning is it gets to a certain point where you can't speak your mind anymore. You can't live your truth. You can't be who you want to be because you have to make so many considerations of other people's feelings that it almost becomes a disability. It renders you ineffective. And the sort of telltale example that I'm working with here is, let's just keep it a person. Let's just say you're approached by a person, you strike up a friendly conversation with a stranger, and they begin to proselytize to you. And, you're up for the conversation, so you let them know you're an atheist, and you really get into the conversation. They're trying to convince you that, you should give your life to Christ, and you're trying to convince them that God doesn't exist. And a friend pulls you away and basically says, hey, that person is not trying to lose their faith today. In other words, ease up, pump the brakes, stop. Now, mind you, you're not the one who brought up the subject of faith in this particular example. The person decided to proselytize to you. All you've done is give your meaningful and honest pushback. And let's say that you're confused by that, and so you're trying to understand, but wait, they brought it up to me. Why is it okay for them to bring it up to me, but not for me to, rebut what they're saying? Oh, well, they're sincerely concerned that you're going to burn in hell. They have to proselytize to you. If they don't proselytize to you, they're afraid that you're going to suffer a fate worse than death for eternity. The two immediate concerns I have is, number one, why is it okay for a person to proselytize to me because they're afraid I'm going to burn in hell, but it's not okay for me to stand up to them and tell them I don't believe that that's true? The second is, who are we really doing this for? Even if I were to entertain the sincere belief of the proselytizer, even if I'm just going to take for granted that they sincerely believe everything they're trying to proselytize to me, and they're sincerely convicted, and they are really concerned that I'm going to burn in hell if they can't convert me to Christianity, who am I not counter proselytizing or who am I sparing them this conversation for? Is me walking away from the conversation because they don't want to lose their faith today? Is that really me demonstrating concern for their best interest? Is the message you want to send to people with life debilitating addictions or problems that, hey, hey, it's all good. If it brings you comfort today, I don't want to take it from you? Is the message you want to send to people with life debilitating addictions or problems that, hey, it's all good. If it brings you comfort today, I don't want to take it from you? What would conversations around addiction or abuse be like if that was our attitude? So for me, this is a huge problem because why are we not more concerned about engaging this person so we can remove this clearly untrue belief from their worldview? If we were really concerned for them, don't we see the symptoms that would they feel the need to proselytize to others? Isn't that a clear sign that they have anxiety about this? Isn't that a clear sign that they're stressed out, burdened by the weight of this religion and what it demands of them and everyone else around them? If we were really, really, really concerned about what's best for that person, wouldn't we urgently want to have the conversation about how their beliefs are not true? So to me, it's not about what's best for that person. And it's not about our truth. Above both those things, we place maintaining a social norm, maintaining the ability to avoid an awkward conversation. That is the hardest part about doing counter apologetics. My audience, this fam, our community, I will put money up. We are in the top 1% of human beings on the planet when it comes to discussing any of these issues. You can't get shit past us. We shutting down all the philosophical arguments for faith. We're shutting down all of that scientific bullshit. We're shutting down all that moralizing nonsense. We're shutting them down on social issues. They can't get shit past us on this Christianity shit. And that is on a weekday. That's on a slow day where we're tired and we're off our game and we really don't feel like being bothered. I don't have to be at fucking 35% to resoundingly shut down everything a fucking religious apologist could offer to me off rip. On my worst day, that shit is fucking easy as hell at this point. It is like asking a fucking concert pianist to play Mary Had a Little Lamb for all the marbles. Man, it's just a fucking joke. The reason we struggle is because we can't have the conversation to begin with. All right, James, I'm gonna turn over to the gather panel before we get into the footage and video and that type of deal. But yeah, James, where y'all at with this?
Exactly where you're at. Exactly right too. It's low-hanging fruit. It's super easy, right? It's just there's no challenge there at all.
Right.
So, what you thinking, Maya? You still with us? Is she still here?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, multitasking, but I agree.
Appreciate you. Yeah, I really do think that's the struggle. It's this coerced thing where we are, James, you've talked about this with your friend recently, right? Where you're a bad person for wanting to have the talk, for wanting to discuss it, for wanting to bring it up, for wanting to share your opinion, right? Mm-hmm. And there's no regard for your personal journey. I mean, imagine telling a battered spouse that they're a dog shit person because it makes men look bad when they talk about being abused by their husband. Right? Imagine telling somebody, falsely imprisoned, or some of these crazy stories we hear in our community that, hey, it makes human traffickers really uncomfortable when you talk about, how painful it was to live in a cage for 3 years. But this is what we're doing in this atheism conversation every day. Right. How dare you atheists talk about the narcissism in religion? How dare you talk about all the shame that was foisted on you? How dare you talk about how difficult it is to rebuild your identity, without your faith? How dare you talk about the isolation you feel and alienation you feel from friends and family and loved ones because they are basing their world on a fucking fairy tale.
Right.
And they have no criticism for the abusers who are basing their worldview on a fairy tale.
Right. And who are making other people's problem.
Right. Nothing but love and open arms for those folks.
Yeah. This is the thing. Like, social inequality is abuse. If you have certain rights and privilege and station in our social dynamic just because you say so, right, that's abuse.
Wow. Yeah. And that's what we're dealing with.
Yeah, so they're acting as flying monkeys for these narcissists, and that just makes them complicit in it. So now they've added their voice to the abusers, and we're supposed to just roll over like, okay, I have been properly humbled and, rendered low.
Right.
No, never mind me, just step right on me and walk right past.
Yeah. And I'm going to bring it home, man. I'm going to keep it real. I want us to think about this in the context of why we can't have the conversations with friends and family. So this isn't going to apply to everybody. A lot of people, you don't care. You shoot from the hip. As soon as you see a cross, you let the counter apologetics fly off rip. You have my undying love, respect, and admiration. I'm trying to get like you. Other people, this is not an issue for you. You're not suffering from compassion poisoning because being super compassionate doesn't make you feel sick. You embrace tolerating religion in your life. You don't have a desire to speak out against the faith of your friends and family. It doesn't bother you to go home for the holidays and bow your head for family prayer and let grandma pray over you for your midterm or that you get that job you're applying for or whatever. Okay, look, I'm not trying to cast aspersions on anybody who feels that way. I'm just trying to tell my story. So please don't feel called out. Don't feel judged if you don't feel like me. This just ain't about you today. Today, I want to talk to people who can somewhat relate to what I'm going through, which is where I cannot be honest with the people in my life the way I want to be because I'm afraid of offending them, because I know they hate when I bring these things up. I know that they think it makes me a jerk for wanting to broach these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that doesn't have to be you, but that's my truth, right? That I want to have this conversation with my mother, and I want to start the conversation by asking a bit of a loaded question, which I really, really try to avoid doing when I'm talking to my mother at all costs. And that is because I want to see what she would say. I want to ask her if she knows why I don't talk to her as much as she would like. Why we're not as close as she'd like us to be. And I wonder what she would say, but I think I would probably have to make it really clear for her, and that would be the purpose of it is that it really is her religion. And it's this feeling that I have to live with every day that we should be talking, right? Like, I don't have an abusive mother or a bad relationship with my parents to where there's some resentment or falling out that we've had, right, that would account for us not talking. Do you see what I'm saying? We don't ostensibly have really a bad relationship. right? And that's why I think it'd be such a great question, because I'm wondering if she could pinpoint it as clearly as I can.
Right.
And I honestly see that as a blessing and a curse, because the silver lining is it's not personal. It isn't something she's done to me. It isn't something she's, like I said, it's not that I think she's a bad person or a bad parent or anything like that. It's literally just you insist on identifying with an organization that I feel hates people like me, and I'm not sure you can be honest about with yourself and with me about what's really at stake here. And it's why I hesitated for so long to even have those conversations, because I knew there'd be no turning back. Once I really figured out how I truly felt about Christianity, I knew once I had the conversation with people, I'd always have to choose between compromising how honest I am, which most of my family and friends will tell you I'm 100% uncompromising in how willing to be honest I am ever. Or I was eventually going to have to be very candid about just how ridiculous I think religion is, and how ridiculous I think it is to continue to identify as a religious person, because I can't avoid the fact that that's how I truly feel, right? And yeah, and that's why it's almost like once that topic is broached, there's no going back for me. Go ahead, James.
So there are some delays. I keep pausing my microphone so that you don't hear me typing.
Oh yeah, that's fine. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can just give you a second. It's no big deal.
So just to let you know, I am paying attention.
I appreciate you. So it's gotten to the point where this is a source of everyday suffering for me. The same way someone might deal with hemorrhoids every day and they don't talk about it, and or they might deal with some minor discomfort, or they're going, they're missing their ex or some shit like that. There's so many. Everybody in our community has shit we deal with day in and day out that we don't even bother talking about. It's like our constant companion. Is it a day that ends in Y? Yeah, okay, cool. I'm still suffering from that thing, so.
Right. Yeah. There's so much.
Yeah, it's like my fucking bipolar. It isn't going anywhere anytime soon, and it has to be managed every single day.
Right. I gotta filter myself. Like sometimes I'm like, no, I've already said this 10 times in the last month. I don't want to say it again. And other times I feel like, well, but I better, right? Because I don't want to be misunderstood. Like I just like it. Like for somebody with a lot of trained psychological experience, for example, it might be enough to tell Maya, my mom was a clinical narcissist, and then Maya can kind of fill in the blanks, go, oh, okay, I know where this is going. But somebody else in the community might be like, what's the relevance? Where's this going? Mm-hmm. And then I feel like, let me explain it for them, right? How that works.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, I mean, that's myself, right? Because I hear, I pay attention to what people say about my channel, and I feel honored in a sense that our channel's growing and our community's growing, and we are starting to pop up in these larger conversations that are happening, right? And I'm fine to just let it all go, because it's part of the YouTubes, it's part of being an entertainer, it's part of having a brand and making a name for yourself, right? But I think a lot of people, rightfully so, I haven't given them reason to think otherwise, just see me as this like angry atheist who just hates Christians and just wants, to just fucking burn it all down tomorrow because I just fucking can't stand these people and I'm just so angry at them, and they kind of see that almost like a young, blacker, scientific-y wrestling Matt Dillahunty or some shit, right? which may be fair. But I don't think they recognize how much of that comes from a place of serious personal suffering that I'm dealing with every single day. You're watching me flip out at this amorphous Christian who I'm tearing a new asshole, and you're like, God damn, how did this guy get to be so hateful towards Christian? And you don't realize in my head, I'm just trying to talk to my fucking mom.
Right.
I'm just saying the shit on YouTube I wish I could say to my mom. And I'm angry about it today because I couldn't muster up the strength to say what I really wanted to say today, and I couldn't do it yesterday, and probably won't tomorrow. It's driving me up a wall. And sure, I don't want to turn my stream into a fucking sob story every day, so I just rant and rave and super kick people in the face. But it is kind of funny where I sometimes hear people say things about me, and I'm going, I think if they understood where I'm coming from, they'd probably get it, Yeah. Right. Yeah, they don't know much about you than they do as Heartbreak J. Exactly. It is a show after all. Exactly, Carrie Ann. It is a show after all. But yeah, I just want to make it clear that that's where I'm coming from, right? Is I feel myself like I'm suffering from this compassion poisoning, and I'm disappointed in myself. And this is the year, I spoke explicitly at the turn of the year about really wanting to be serious about counter-apologetics this year, in the sense of pushing the button and saying the things I want to say and speaking to the issues we really want to speak to. And yes, going as far as to say, yes, I think people should stop being Christians, and yes, I think they should stop being Christians now. And so I'm suffering even more acutely as a result of feeling a very reasonable need to continue to take these steps forward, because that's what I've committed to doing. And I think it's the only way I'm ever gonna heal my relationship with my family. We're just gonna have to have it out on probably a whole bunch of shit so that I can really feel seen enough that I could actually, leave it alone and move forward. But I can't do that when they haven't heard me. And I certainly can't do that because they're continuing to wear the label and fly the flag and worship the Jesus and support the church. And my grandfather keeps preaching and da-da-da-da-da. So, I wanted to even call my mom literally today. I had the thing with Rob and, but I really wanted to call my mom and talk about it today. And one of the things I wanted to talk about when I talked to her is to say, yeah, I did a stream about this last night. I'm going to do another one later. And you know what's going to happen in your house? You're going to hang up this fucking conversation, and your father's going to be up in a fucking room preparing a fucking sermon tomorrow, probably all about fucking family values or how you got to be saved by Jesus to get to heaven in the end. And you're not even recognizing what all of that says about me and people like me and the shit that I care about. Mm-hmm. I don't win in a fucking stalemate. I don't win if we just keep this going. Not that it's about winning and losing, but I'm not whole, right? I'm not okay. You know what I'm saying? It's and in all these conversations we have where we consider their needs first, consider their emotions first, consider what their faith demands of them first, we're not hearing each other say, yo, I'm not okay with this. And can I get some love at least within my community for me needing some support, dealing with what I'm not okay about? No, nope. No, No. Instead, consider how you telling your truth is gonna hurt your abuser's feelings. And it's like, God damn it, really? Yeah. But that's, that's kind of where I'm at. No, you can't share gather links with anybody ever. But I can email Oz and Jenna the password links. Yeah, like when I'm not off share, because they're because we know them, so I can send them. But yeah, don't share the links and passwords. It's a very strict rule. I have to be aware at all times of who's been invited, who hasn't been, and I don't want people to feel like they're being mean if they tell somebody they can't invite people. So I make it a rule for everybody. No exceptions. Right. Yeah. But yeah, so that's all. But yeah, I'll invite them later. But yeah, they're fine to join our community. So yeah, James, that's kind of how I wanted to set the stage, right? Is I wanted to put a little skin in the game. I didn't want this to come off as me just attacking Christianity for no reason, and I wanted to be clear that this is my current struggle right now, right? And that's where I'm at.
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all of it, right? Because, I mean, you want to be seen, you want to be heard, you want to be understood in the context of your story, your journey, your character, you as a character, not just your personal character, but you as a character in a story of life.
Right.
Like, they're still seeing you in the context of you're a character in the story, in their religious story.
Right.
And you're like, you are not actually seeing me as a person if you see me as a character in your religious story.
Right.
And if you can't see me as the person that I am, and if you can't grant me the respect to recognize that my story is different than the one that you have written for me and that other religious people wrote for you, if you can't see me outside that context, then we can't have a real relationship. That creates this wall of division between us that just keeps us in these separate domains where language has different meaning and where the lived experience is different context, and where my journey is not understood and respected. And my journey matters. My struggles matter. These accomplishments, this growth that matters, that's part of who I am. If you're not keeping up, then we're just getting further and further apart.
Yeah. You also brought up something like social inequality is inherently abuse, and I'll be thinking about that one for a while. But I've always wanted to say this too, that when we have these relationships with Christians, and I hope people in the audience understand where I'm coming from. When we start to have these sort of atheist Christian conversations, I honestly feel like, James, we're already starting from a place that reveals a social inequality in the relationship. In other words, there's already something broken in the relationship. Because with a lot of these people, let's say it's friends or family, you've either seriously been a Christian already, right? Or you have seriously investigated Christianity extensively, right? And when they bring things up, if there's issues, first off, normally they're issues you've already investigated extensively, right? But if they're not, you're certainly willing to, and you'll go do your homework. But when you hit them with I don't believe any of that's true. Now, here it is that this person is normally a serious Christian, or else you wouldn't be having a conversation with them, which means it's a huge part of their identity. They're literally a member of the cult. And here it is that you're supposed to be a friend with them, and you've just literally told them God's not real. Jesus isn't God. Virgins don't give birth, whatever it is.
Right. Your whole religion's a con.
Yeah. And they're under no obligation to follow that up with some serious self-investigation with the genuine skepticism that you might be right.
Right.
How are we supposed to be having any sort of relationship on equal footing at this point? If I can literally tell you you're wrong about what you claim to be the most important thing in your life, and I don't have enough credibility to you that means that don't put a pebble in your shoe, you ain't got some shit to go look into after this?
Right.
How close would somebody have to be to you, and how important would an issue have to be to you for you to have some fucking obligation to do something about this potential disagreement here?
Mm-hmm.
But they want to give you, bless your heart, I'm so glad we were able to have lunch together. Yes, we could do this again next week, and see you later.
Right. I mean, they built their whole relationship with you on a false paradigm.
Like, wow. Like you just said that shit whimsically and shit. Like, like really, really. So to me, that's the other part of this that people don't recognize is like when you realize this with your friends and family. There's a reason
why this world's going to hell.
Yeah, you're essentially acknowledging and realizing I'm already not in a healthy relationship with these people. We're already in an abusive relationship. I'm already in a position of fucked upness where their perspective is infinitely more valid and, to be taken seriously than mine. No matter, even in the case of my life, people will flatter me with things that don't make me feel better. They'll flatter me with well, I know you're super educated and you don't really come to opinions without doing your research, and you do have wow. So you're basically telling me you think I'm fucking brilliant, and you still won't look into what I don't know if you're hearing the backhandedness of the compliment you're paying me right now, but you're basically on one hand saying I'm as brilliant of a person as you can imagine. And I'm not saying you got to tell me that, but that's what you're telling me. And you still won't look into what I'm saying?
Right.
God damn. It's just, it's crazy. It's really crazy. All right, so look, that's to set the stage. We're going to try to get through some of this footage. We're looking at Theremin Tree's video on resisting emotional blackmail. So let's go ahead and get into this. Let me, I done fucked up because I don't have Myron Bot doing the right.
Thank you for coming today. My name's Tim
What?
I'm
What?
a writer.
What?
And, column.
All right, there we go. Let's do that. Oh, yeah, I bounced Myron Bot for a sec. All right, hang on a sec. Let me fix that real fast. Because you guys can't see my screen. All right, here we go.
Comfort. What does this word bring to mind for you? At first glance, it might seem a fluffy little concept, a pleasant feeling of relaxation, a state of ease, peace of mind. Sounds nice enough, but not exactly essential to life. If we dig deeper, we find more potent senses of the word. Freedom from pain or constraint, the easing or alleviation of grief or distress. It's in these definitions that the real value of comfort emerges, the vital ability to take relief, even for a moment, from misery. Even with people we might despise, seeing a vulnerable human being in torment can stir our most powerful instincts for compassion. We feel disarmed. These instincts represent some of our most humanizing qualities, sometimes melting previous divisions, dissolving hostilities, allowing us to connect with each other in powerfully healing ways. But these same compassionate instincts can also have harmful consequences. In our attempts to comfort some people, we sometimes end up throwing others under the bus. Like when we tell our atheist son he should keep going to church to make his mother happy. When our daughter discloses her same-sex attraction and we command her never to tell her father, to spare his feelings. When targets decide to go no contact with their abusers, and we urge them not to because it's so cruel. Sadly, many individuals submit to these appeals. For others, who decline to erase themselves, there are plenty of voices ready to try and pile on the emotional blackmail. For people who've been trained to look after...
All right, here we go. I endured religious abuse. Here we go. If religion gives comfort, you shouldn't criticize. Why not just go tell your story on the cancer wards? Snatch comfort from people on their deathbeds. Wonderful job helping to destroy Western society. Yeah, it's crazy.
Everyone else's welfare, sometimes to the total exclusion of their own.
Yes.
These kinds of emotional blackmail can feel extremely difficult and slippery to deal with.
Yes.
Inviting targets to feel guilty and heartless if they don't comply. But none of these supposedly compassionate appeals stand up. And when we stand back for a minute and examine any of them, their manipulative power evaporates.
I'm trying to keep
Whether
the tape
we're a
rolling,
target,
y'all, but this is really
a perpetrator,
good.
Or a witness to emotional blackmail, we all have the capacity to reflect on our choices and distance ourselves from this abuse. Resisting emotional blackmail means becoming more discerning in our responses to distress.
Now, this is something else we've got to deal with, and this is kind of something we've got to be on guard for. A lot going on in our community is this role of witnessing, because sometimes that's what we're going to be seeing a lot in our community, is when you're witnessing it in these chats and in these discussions. But I think in our personal lives is where we're going to be more likely to be the victims of emotional blackmail. And of course, you can also be a perpetrator, and we want to avoid that.
And learning that some appeals for personal comfort should not be indulged. Counterintuitively, this doesn't mean becoming less compassionate, but more compassionate. And it means recognizing the double-edged nature of emotion, which can be a valuable friend and a terrible enemy. Emotions play a vital role in navigating life. Part of that role is providing crucial shortcuts in the simple daily dilemmas we encounter. Individuals who've lost emotional response can become immobilized in a nightmare of information processing, generating endless rational arguments for different courses of action. Just choosing a shirt to wear could leave them overwhelmed. Emotion short-circuits this rumination. We choose what feels right. Social psychologist Robert Science challenged popular assumptions of his time that emotion only occurred after rational information processing had taken place. He noted research on preferences, attitudes, impression formation, and decision-making, suggesting that emotional judgments were often made independently of rational considerations, made faster than rational considerations, and made with greater confidence. Other researchers have supported these observations, including neuroscientist Antonio Damasio, who found that our emotional evaluations of situations and their outcomes play a central role in our decision-making. Unfortunately, the same simplistic nature of emotional processing that stops us agonizing over simple choices often leaves us open to manipulation from emotional appeals, which encourage us to make uninformed judgments on matters that need more serious consideration. We can end up buying things we don't want, doing unreasonable favors for people, condemning the innocent, getting preyed on by ideological groups in the midst of our grief, giving abusers that one last chance, again. Simplistic emotional processing also leads us to place quite staggering burdens on others. When we tell our atheist son to keep going to church for his mother's sake, or command our daughter to hide her same-sex attraction from her father, or urge targets not to go no contact with their abusers, or try to silence accounts of religious abuse, we might genuinely believe we're doing something kind, even performing a humanitarian service.
This is what I see being an issue for me and others in our community, it's the short-term high of feeling like you've chosen the more peaceful response in a tense situation. Everybody else reached for their guns, and you were the peacekeeper. And we fall into this a lot. You see two people yelling at each other on stream, and what do? You demand that they both calm down. And you don't realize that by doing that, you might actually be reifying the abuse. I've even felt this way in streams before, where I've had a bunch of people going at me, I thought unfairly, and then had the streamer call me out, which just makes all the people who were trolling me think that they were right to be trolling me. But then they were all like, oh, I'm just trying to play peacekeeper. Yeah, well, pay attention next time. Because, going for the quick thing that makes you look like you're the peaceful one isn't always helpful. And, this is what is going on, I think, with this Sobek situation, where Sobek feels the need to be the white knight in shining armor for Rebecca, who herself is a terribly abusive personality. And so then they're just abusive towards me because I have the audacity to call out this toxic personality in our community. Because again, I'm a big meanie. But whatevs, I'm gonna hold people accountable. Yeah, so I don't know. So for people who don't know I found the comment, and it was on one of my streams. I did a stream about raggedy ass Rebecca, who, by the way, is a total fucking disappointment. Like, some of the bitch's content is so dumb, I can't even make content ripping it. And it really is a letdown. Really is a letdown. Like, it's not even worth making fun of. Like, that's shitty. You gotta have some standards here. All right. Go ahead, James.
I mean, I'm with you 100% on that.
So the comment was, as long as we're speaking truth to power here, you to Doug, to your quote-unquote friends like Jimmy and Nitty, to Price, etc., and you're supposedly the arbiter of, quote, morality, deciding who your friends can and can't hang out with. Just want to say I find it extremely hypocritical in telling that you're calling women, quote-unquote, BSJ. Even if you disagree, do better, don't, not my problem. Hope your 2 PhDs keep you warm at night with all that weird control freak impulse and the gross misogyny. So that's that. But again, like, I guess I'm a misogynist, but look, let me tell you something. That raggedy bitch Rebecca deserves to be called out all day, every day, and I will continue to do so. I mean, as long as it's at least fucking mildly entertaining. I mean, sometimes the bitch is so stupid it's not even worth my fucking time. But seriously, I'm not gonna enable this fucking bullshit. And the funny thing is, James, you know what the funny, ironic thing about it, James, is like, sometimes I get a little bit bored with Rebecca. She's just so fucking stupid and ridiculous. But when
That's
people...
very charitable of you to say sometimes and a little bit. Good job.
But then you see the simping and how toxic the simping for her gets, and then you're like, nah, I gotta wear this raggedy bitch out because the people are still coming to her defense. So the irony, they would literally... Maybe it'd be easier for me to leave her alone if people stop treating her like, this is the second coming of the fucking Free Britney movement. Like, like, it's fucking ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But again, it's more of the same. Rebecca is literally, I'm a goddamn evolutionary biologist and an atheist. And Rebecca is literally toxic and abusive to both of those identities at all fucking times. But again, her religion brings her comfort. She likes to smile and nod. We should just smile and nod and go along with it. And if not, we're misogynist because we're criticizing a female.
That is ironically misogynistic for him to think that
Totally.
women need to be. Yeah, that's that whole women are the weaker species and we have to protect them because they can't handle their shit.
Yeah.
Nobody told her to step into the arena.
Nobody.
Right?
Nobody.
And she has gone out of her way to try to build a platform of interactivity with our atheist community. Right? It's not like she's over there doing her own thing and we found her. It's not like some church that just posts shit every Sunday to support their church with and we go and find them. And no, I mean, this is directly, hey, you atheists, you're idiots, and here's why. Right? She brings us in. She calls people by name. She exchanges emails with them and says, I'm thinking about leaving, and try to get people to talk her into staying. She's done everything she can to intertwine and tell the people. She has Atheist of the Month awards and pays people money.
Exactly.
So this is not some independent person that we just randomly found and decided to go after. She keeps making herself relevant to our community. Now, we can choose to ignore her. I usually do. But sometimes she makes it onto my radar because people are talking about the latest stupid shit she said. So in the meantime, if we get this attitude that like women have this protected bubble of special privilege because they're women and they need to be protected by us masculine protecting men, that's some sexist bullshit right there, ironically. And then if we all started humoring that, Christianity would figure it out real quick to be like, shit, we can say whatever the fuck we want to anybody at any time, and all we have to do is make sure it's our women saying it. Then they won't come after us at all. They won't defend themselves. They won't set the record straight, right?
Yes.
And then we can't have that. We can't create this little protected way where they can just have an accountability in the social sphere.
Yes. And to be honest, it's really a problem because there's this creepy thing in Christian circles where the men brag on the attractiveness of their women. And it has some sort of weird social shielding mechanism going on. It's very gross, but you see it with Rebecca, like it actually pays off. Like, people are grossly sympathetic to her when, to me, she's not a sympathetic figure. But whatever the effect is, the Karenicity of it all, or whatever it is, I don't know why it's so appealing to people, but it really is. The thing I love though, James, is that we have some badass women in our community, and that shit drives them up a fucking wall. They're not having it. Like Heathen Queen and shit, not having it at all.
Right.
Yeah, and I love that.
So yeah, I mean, it is because they consider her generally attractive from their point of view that makes them want to simp.
Yeah.
Right. So you notice they don't simp as hard for what's her name? Rebecca's friend, the other lady that she switched to Catholicism recently, I think. TJ, AJ, I don't fuck her name. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, no, switch to Catholicism. I thought she was talking about Cameron Bertuzzi.
No. So, like, there's less attractive women in that circuit, right?
Okay, yeah.
They say problematic shit, we push back, and nobody runs to their rescue because they're not pretty enough to simp for, right? So we know what's going on here.
Yeah. Same thing with Taylor, right? Like, they were all fucking...
Yeah.
Everybody was so mean for beating up on Taylor, when Taylor literally was dumb enough to be like, I use God to fill in the gaps. And we're like, did y'all just hear this bitch say she just confessed the God of the gap fallacy? And literally they were like, how dare you be so mean to her? We were like, dude, she used the fallacies in her statements of like her MO. She was like, my MO is fallacies. What's wrong with y'all? What's wrong with the rest of you? And we were jerks for calling that out. Again, no, we did the non-sexist thing, which we treated it like horseshit coming out of her mouth, like we'd treated it like horseshit coming out of anybody else's mouth. Crazy how that works.
but it's just keyhole compassion, focusing on one party's possible distress and completely failing to process the experience of the other party.
Oh, there it is.
Let's widen the aperture and look at what we're really asking.
Yep.
Here we have individuals who've often had to cope with long-term manipulation, abuse, and dogma, grappling with draining levels of shame, anxiety, and neurosis. Many feel like imposters, unable to fully receive love from the people around them, disconnected from their lives by pretending to be what others expect them to be, just to survive. And now, just as they're beginning to move towards freedom, integrity, truth, and the restoration of psychological health,
that's right,
we're directing them to carry on sacrificing all of that, just so other people can keep some comforting illusions. Callous as it might seem to casually consign people to a lifetime of repression like this, it's not always driven by conscious, malicious intent.
Yeah.
Often, it's pure laziness. As the law of less work observes, given the option, we tend to choose the courses of action that require the least effort.
Yep.
And not just physical effort. In a 2010 study by Cool and colleagues, participants showed a significant bias towards courses of action that demanded less thinking. Many studies like this show that where possible, humans often try to avoid effortful mental activity. Keyhole compassion is a hopelessly simplistic emotional response to potential conflict, trying to bypass the complexity of having to think, discuss, negotiate, and resolve, and instead just pretend nothing's different. In fact, keyhole compassion often works against both parties. To see why, let's look at comfort zones. We could visualize our comfort zone as a circle containing all the activities, feelings, and ideas we feel most at ease with. Outside that, we have a ring we could label growth. This is a less comfortable area we move into when we're stretched by new activities, feelings, and ideas, learning new skills, working through difficult but manageable new problems. By trading some comfort for development, our central comfort zone expands. Outside this, we have another ring we could label overload. Here, the level of challenge starts to become unmanageable. We become depleted and begin to accumulate damage. To develop ourselves and expand our comfort zone, we want to be spending significant time in the growth ring. We also want to limit the time we spend in overload. At times of grief and distress, we might experience extended periods in overload, and it's important to recharge with healthy sources of comfort. When we try to make our daughter's sexuality a guilty secret kept from her father, we're directing her to spend significant time in overload, constantly topping up the shame, anxiety, and fear she yearns to recover from.
Gang, this is so good. And you got to understand that a lot of times if you're a witness and a bystander to this, it's in the short term, it feels good. It feels good to be the peacemaker. Blessed are the peacemakers, right? It feels good to say, hey, let's go along to get along. Hey, everybody sacrifice a little bit so that we can maintain the social harmony. But this is exactly what I feel like. This is exactly what happens for me. It's like I'm going through this period of serious identity change, and it's so hard to expand the circle of what I'm comfortable with, because now it's like there's nowhere to go. To be honest, sometimes I only feel safe amongst our community, in our community's safe spaces. That makes sense, James. So,
yeah, it does. Sorry, I had to unpause.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Like YouTube doesn't even feel safe because of idiots like Lupin, right? Like we can't have a conversation about resisting emotional abuse and blackmail without somebody coming through and emotionally blackmailing us during that conversation. I'm just commentating on what's going on in real time, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it's like. This is the only community I feel emotionally safe in, and I can't even feel safe amongst my community when my community is publicly facing. It's why we feel safer in Discord. It's why we feel safest in Gather, where there are passwords and technological challenges between us and trolls. You gotta add a password and get over the moat, figure out which island we're on. You gotta really want to link up with the gang. But it's sad because then it's literally that's what I'm experiencing with my family, because when we come to these spaces, we're constantly told, no, consider the feelings of the trolls in your chat, consider the feelings of the Christians that you're criticizing, right? And then we can't go to our own friends and family, a lot of us, without them totally shutting us down. Hey, yeah, I heard you say you're an atheist, but I mean, are you serious? Do you really actually want to talk about it? Right? So that's not a safe space. And it's crazy. It's like, where do we go? And this is what I realized is the problem when we put our compassion for the other side in front of our compassion for each other. If James comes to me and says, and James, I guess I'm going to use you because you maybe don't have this situation, but, well, yeah, in a situation, you had a situation like your friend, right? When your friend was making you feel bad, right?
Sure, she came into my space, into my DM, to make me feel bad about things I say in my space.
Right.
But I never say in her space, and then I never bring to her at all. While she was, because she only knew about it because she was following me, which I didn't even know she was following.
Sure.
She just want to let me know that she doesn't like how I use my space.
Right.
And that I'm basically, and to paraphrase fairly, a dog shit person doing a dog shit thing.
Right.
Because people, all religious people, should be respected. They shouldn't be challenged.
Right. And I, now I recognize in that situation, your initial inkling was to like pull back a little bit. Maybe she's right. I don't want to keep dealing with these consequences. Yada yada yada.
I wrestled with it.
Yeah, you really did wrestle with it, which I think just speaks again to what we were saying. If you're trying to be in an equitable relationship with someone, even if you disagree with them, if a person you take seriously tells you you've got a character flaw, you're going to reflect on that and investigate it and wrestle it out with others, because you're not a dog shit person who would just let that roll in one ear and out the other.
Right. And so there were so many nuances I wrestled with, and it was a little bit ironic because she's not a nuanced thinker. She's not deeply complex and nuanced. So if I'm wrestling with deep complexity and nuance, then I'm automatically wrestling with something she didn't even have in mind. But at the same time, knowing this, I still want to hold myself accountable. Like, okay, my space, my voice, I value that. These issues are important, and I know why, but maybe I'm not using my language responsibly enough. Maybe I could word things this way instead of that way and make it more of a focus.
Yes. And I felt like that was too much to ask of you, right? Because again, you just shouldn't have to. You shouldn't have to get 5 PhDs in linguistics to be able to tell your story.
especially when let's say I decide that I shouldn't. Let's say I decide, you know what, I need to start using language differently, right? Phrase things this way instead of that way, and all that. That nuance is still going to be lost on people like her. She's going to walk into the room, and I'm going to be having this much more careful, nuanced conversation with these mature linguistics, and it's going to be completely lost on her. All that growth and all that care. Right. She's just going to say, but you're still challenging people's religious culture and identity and everything else. She's still going to say it's the dog shit thing to do.
That's the irony. The irony is they demand you use more nuanced language, but if they actually heard the more nuanced language, you're going to take the nuance right out of it.
Yep.
Right out of it.
Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, so the bottom line for her really was, don't talk about this shit at all. Not even in your own space. And, I'm going to stay away from you because you're not even a safe person as long as you're that kind of person that would do that. And I'm like, she doesn't even get that makes her the unsafe person, not me.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. All right, let's roll through some more of this. Man, I'm loving this video.
But we're also preventing her father from moving out of comfort into growth. Millions of parents who are initially hostile when they find out their offspring don't conform to some hope or expectation do come around eventually and enjoy a closeness neither party would have imagined. A closeness based on truth, not an illusion of closeness based on pretense.
Now, ironically, this is what I was starting to feel with my mom. We were starting to talk more. We were having more conversations. We were, I was living my truth. I didn't have to bring it up all the time, but if I needed to talk about something, I could, And then it felt like, even though I knew my grandparents were moving in with her, when they actually did, that's when it took a serious step back. And it was because now that my grandparents were living with her, I felt the need to be concerned about whether or not they're in earshot. Are they around? Is she, just coming from spending time with them? Is she getting ready to spend time with them? Is she about to sit down at dinner with them? Are they sitting in the same room, right? So it changed all of decision calculus that I had to make when talking to my mom. Before, I didn't have to worry about it. I knew eventually it'd come, but I called my mom. My mom's having her conversations with me, and her husband's a really serious Christian too. But he's my mom's husband. I don't really have to take his that into account when I'm talking to her, right?
Yeah.
But when, it's my grandparents being around and now they're still like actively ministering from within her house, it turned her house. She said she'd never let them run the church out of the house or let the house be turned into a church house, but she just won't call it that. But if they're preaching the sermons from a room in your house and that's where they run the church from, then they are in fact running a church out of your house.
Right.
And of course, your atheist son doesn't feel comfortable when you're running the anti-atheist cult from your house. So it did. This is what was happening, and now it's like shrinking. It sucks.
Right.
It sucks.
Kept in ignorance, they would never have got to experience that. Instinctive emotional thinking is great for quick fixes, not long-term solutions. Trying to apply simplistic emotional shortcuts to complex situations can leave us locked in pain and ignorance. Sometimes an entire group is destroyed in the process.
We're in the ranch, Joel. We're in the ranch at on the stage. Yeah, Joel found us. All right, good. And I timed Wolfden out because he made fun of Stupid or Energy's name. I don't care about creationist bullshit. Don't go at Stupid or Energy. Talk about shit.
Whenever Maeve or Rini fall out of lockstep with the personal plans and preferences of their mother, Norma, she loses it. Their offences might range from not being free for some family event, to revealing they didn't plan to have children, to cutting their hair short. On good days, Norma might descend into displays of wailing distress. On bad days, she escalates into full-blown screaming tantrums. Each time, Norma's codependent husband, Colin, tries to comfort her. For Colin, who spends most of his home life silently blending into the furniture, these incidents are just about the only time he springs into action. Often, after Norma eventually calms down, Colin scolds his daughters for upsetting her. Sometimes he tells them, "You've destroyed your mother." If Colin had stepped out of simplistic emotional reflex mode and into effortful reflective thinking, things could have turned out very differently. Recognizing the long-term damage his daughters faced without his intervention, he might have formulated strategies to defend them against Norma's abuse, found ways to support them when they stood up for themselves. He could have built strong relationships with them and cultivated a solidarity that elevated the whole family. Whether or not his marriage survived, he'd still have Maeve and Renee in his life. Instead, relying on endless emotional quick fixes, he focused exclusively on comforting Norma. He declined to defend his daughters and crushed their attempts to self-champion, which just seemed to antagonize Norma. He tried to train them to be invisible like him in the false hope of an easier life. In fact, things got much worse. By offering zero pushback, Colin reinforced Norma's belief that she could do anything without consequence.
Yes.
Eventually, Maeve and Renee will break all contact with their parents, leaving Colin to console the monster he helped to create.
Yeah, and this is what
Colin will be missed.
This is what is causing me to build up significant resentment towards my grandparents. The fact that everyone has, including myself, failed to hold them accountable their entire lives. And now I can't take it anymore. But that's the very thing that makes me the most out of lockstep with everybody who refuses to have them ever face any consequences. And it's monstrous. Because this is it's what happens when the entire family has bought into the gaslighting behavior of the abuser. It's like you could fill this picture out, but imagine like those two girls over here and a whole bunch of pink people in between them, like an entire network of pink people enabling this blue abuser, right, James? Like it's crazy. It's crazy because sometimes these dynamics build up over generations in families, right? So it's not just you v grandma. It's you v your parents, aunts and uncles, all the other grandkids, second cousins, third cousins, because you're now finding yourself in the position as the only one who just can't take it anymore.
Right. To this family cultural norm that everybody's supposed to not even question.
Right.
And within the context of that, there's probably plenty of people questioning it and we're, severely at odds with it, but they don't feel free to speak up.
Right.
And so it gives the illusion that any one of them, it makes the individual think, I'm the only person here who has a problem with this, so maybe I shouldn't speak up.
Right.
And reality is lots of people have a problem with it. Everybody's afraid to speak up.
Yes, and then when somebody does speak up, everybody goes to the traditional thing, which is you shouldn't speak up, because I don't feel like I should speak up, so you shouldn't speak up. Right? So it's easier for me to silence the one person speaking up than to really turn to everybody else and be like, yeah, we should all have been speaking up this entire time.
Right.
Yeah.
Defied by their departure, and will blame them for destroying the family. Norma is a squeaky wheel. The term comes from an old proverb. The squeaky wheel gets the oil, or, in the US, the grease. The message is that people who make the most noise often end up getting what they want. The squeaky wheel...
I always had a pleasant way of saying this with my advisor. I had a really good relationship with my graduate school advisor, and part of it was because I came in the least prepared of anybody in the lab, but we always had a great relationship. And I always just say, I'm the squeaky wheel that gets the oil, because I'm the one he doesn't really know if I'm the one who's the fire hazard and the safety risk and the contamination problem, and he's got to do the most to find an actual, legitimate research agenda for me to do and all of this type of stuff. But in a sense, there's a way you love being the squeaky wheel. So that's what a lot of this is about. It's about bad intentions gone too far, right? It's great in relationships when someone recognizes your need and gives you additional time and resources to help meet that need, right? But it goes too far when it becomes the enabling and shit. Yeah, it's just funny because I do use this expression sometimes positively with my mentors in sort of a self-deprecating way. Yeah,
be a parent, a child who gets indulged by parents and siblings, an employee in the workplace, an ideological group. In his attempts to comfort Norma, Colin was certainly trying to alleviate distress. The pivotal question is, whose distress? On the surface, it would seem to be about Norma's. In fact, it's all about Colin's, which is the root of this entire mess. The fact is, Colin's uncomfortable with difficult feelings.
Yes, and that is the critical fucking difference here, gang. When I'm being the squeaky wheel that gets the oil, my advisor is giving me the oil because the wheel actually needs it, right? He's doing it because I need his help. When we're dealing with this emotional blackmail stuff, it's people are giving the attention and the resources to your abusers, to the people that are the ones with the problematic behavior because it makes them uncomfortable, right? When your friend pulls you away and says, stop counter-apologizing that dude, he doesn't want to lose his faith today, it's because they don't want to be witness to an uncomfortable conversation.
Right.
They don't want to have to sit in the awkwardness. And so in that moment, they disregard both your clear discomfort. In other words, I'm a person who feels very strongly against religion. And if you have the audacity to bring your religion to my faith, you absolutely should hear my honest perspective on it. And they also don't care about the severely misguided religious person who continues to, break social norms and have all this abusive behavior. And they don't care how much that person is themselves suffering from their own inability to grow. They don't care. All they want to do is play peacemaker and hit the eject button and get themselves out of an awkward situation as fast as possible, and then point fingers at other people for not playing nice.
Right.
Yeah.
He's never learned to deal with them, to tolerate them, sit with them, reflect on what they're really about. Because of this, his knee-jerk emotional reflex is to shut them down. This real-life case illustrates the difference between compassion and enabling. Compassion supports and nurtures healthy development. It acknowledges the wider context of a situation and recognizes that comforting interventions sometimes have negative consequences, like obstructing learning and reducing motivation to change. By recognizing when to step in and when not to, compassion facilitates growth. In contrast, enabling indulges and excuses unhealthy behavior. It focuses on the superficial discomfort of the moment and ignores harmful potential knock-on effects. As a result, enabling facilitates impoverishment. By enabling Norma, Colin reinforced her dependence, regression, and fragility. The use of emotional blackmail also distinguishes compassion from its corrupted imitator. When targets of abuse go no contact with malignant abusers, some enablers try to shame them, claiming it's like going no contact with someone because they have cancer, punishing someone for being unwell. This analogy is classic emotional blackmail. It completely disregards the welfare of targets.
Hey gang, this includes they're from a different time. Things were different back in their day.
And adds insult to abuse by painting them as heartless caricatures. Let's bring the analogy into line with the reality of the abusive situation. Imagine that contact with the patient sets off an extreme allergic response in the visitor. Just a word, or even a look, could send the visitor's immune system into overdrive, producing a range of volatile symptoms. This is what abuse does. As a legacy of the endless attacks targets have endured, Their psychological immune systems become hyper-responsive around the abuser. They've learned all the little phrases and gestures that signify a coming storm. In response to these stimuli, the target's defenses explode into overreaction. Unlearning these deeply conditioned responses can be a tough, lengthy process. Ongoing contact with abusers, which constantly reactivates these responses, can sabotage and unravel the target's recovery. Going no contact doesn't just offer a path to health for targets, but also for abusers. For some abusers, experiencing the authentic rejection that results from their abusive behavior motivates them to seek help.
Boom. Oh, I couldn't put that any better, man. Because this has been the journey in my own journey, man. I have learned some hard lessons on the other side of hard consequences. But it has made me realize how much we rob people of learning opportunities when we refuse for them to bear consequences. Like he said, that genuine rejection as a result of one's behavior is what leads to a deeper reflection and often a deeper correction. And that's, to be honest, that was the deal with what was happening even with the Pine Creek situation. There was what I would call an implicit rejection already happening in our community. There are already people in our community who didn't want to support people because they were, you know, they were enabling a person we had problems with. And so what happened was, by not realizing that rejection because it wasn't made explicit, they didn't realize how they were contributing to the problem. Now, once that rejection became explicit, you have lost the support of these people. Notice, right? All of a sudden, people who really felt deeply about that, you know, like, showed themselves to be allies. They showed themselves to care deeply, and they, you know, it was all good, right? And other people kind of showed they don't care. But it's really important that people do that to provide that opportunity. It was sort of, to be honest, it's the quote unquote strategy or tactic I take with a person like Doug in the bigger picture. I don't think I can influence that person necessarily directly. And I'm not sure necessarily that, you know, them facing social consequences is necessarily going to make them change any goddamn thing. But it certainly provides them an opportunity for reflection, because you leave them no choice but to observe the change in their environment. Going, holy shit, you know, is it really the case that my behavior, the things I say, can cause me to lose friends, lose community, lose support? Yeah, it can. Right?
Yeah.
But so many of us are unintentionally enabling people because we're so afraid of actually having people face consequences. That just makes us feel like we're being way too cruel. And then the irony is our community has not quite gotten on board with being supportive of that, because a lot of us are dealing with right-wing semantic infiltration, to where we know we need to bring consequences to people, and we know what them consequences look like. you don't have access to us anymore. You get cut off. We don't support you anymore. Which again, James, that's nothing. That's bottom of the barrel. We're not in positions of power. We're not firing the fucking people. We're not reneging. We're not withdrawing their mortgages. We're not excising them from we're not kicking them out of the country. We're saying you're gonna lose some followers on social media. Yeah, there were gonna be some people watching your YouTube videos yesterday who ain't gonna be watching them tomorrow. And even that tool gets removed from our toolkit because if you have too much, emotional blackmail, you're made to feel like you're an asshole because you're part of the woke cancel culture mob just for having some fucking standards in your goddamn life.
Sure. I mean, but I mean, there's room for some nuanced discussion there about where to draw the line.
100%. 100%.
But we don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now. I mean, the point of the video stands. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Protecting them from rejection removes that motivation. Compassion allows both parties to choose health. If abusers refuse it, their targets are no less free to choose health for themselves. In contrast, enabling blocks that choice for both parties.
AR, what is AR
If we
doing?
don't want to turn ourselves or anyone else into human chairs for the indulgence of others, we need to put our brains to work. We need to shift out of emotional quick fix thinking and into effortful, reflective thinking. We need to become comfortable with some difficult feelings. In particular, we need to recognize that difficult feelings can often be a healthy and vital part of development, and that trying to shut them down can sabotage that development. Sometimes that sabotage can span generations. Life is a struggle for every species on the planet. We're thrust into a survival situation in which we face danger, uncertainty, and lack of control. Humans use a huge range of coping mechanisms to get through these challenges. We use mood-altering substances and activities as a deflection: food, alcohol, drugs, sex, immersion in fictitious worlds from literature, cinema, and television. All fine in moderation. Not so fine if they become addictions or ways of avoiding impending crises. Another coping mechanism is magical thinking, proposing causal relationships between events, processes, and entities for which there's no demonstrable connection. Lindemann and Arnio described magical thinking as ontological confusions between the distinct processes of physics, biology, and psychology. We might believe inanimate objects have intentions, or that our thoughts have the power to create catastrophe. Research bears out what we might have suspected. Magical thinking peaks when we experience danger, uncertainty, and lack of control. When anthropologist Bronislaw Malinowski studied the inhabitants of the Trobriand Islands off the east coast of New Guinea, he found an interesting disparity in their fishing practices. When they fished in the lagoon, they could use an easy, reliable method of poisoning that produced consistently large catches. In contrast, fishing in the open sea was hazardous, and there were huge variations in the size of their catches. Malinowski noted that with lagoon fishing, where the fishers could rely on knowledge and skill, there was no appeal to magic. But with the open sea fishing, where there was danger and uncertainty, magical rituals were extensively practiced to try and secure safety and results. When we feel a lack of personal control, we sometimes compensate by turning to external systems that seem to symbolize greater control. In a 2008 study, Kay and colleagues asked participants to rate the likelihood that some kind of god or non-human entity existed who controlled events in the universe. Prior to this question, some participants had been directed to remember times in their lives when they felt absolutely no personal control. Other participants were told to recall events in which they did feel personal control. Members from the no personal control group, were much more inclined to endorse the existence of a controlling being. This ties into a vast field of research, showing how we change our magical ideas to meet the psychological needs of the moment. In times of overwhelming overload, magical thinking provides a comforting refuge for some people. In many cases, the mood-altering effect of focusing on a magical idea can help some individuals continue to function in the most intense part of a crisis, before coming back down to earth and gathering the strength to face reality at a manageable pace. The trouble arises when our use of magical thinking opens the door to harm, to others or ourselves. Like drink and drugs, everything depends on the variety you're using and the quantity you're taking. Wearing what you believe to be lucky underwear during an exam might well help you pass, not because the underwear has magical properties, but because your belief lowers your anxiety, boosts your confidence, and enhances your performance. But that belief becomes harmful if relying on your underwear leads you to neglect your studies. And the problems multiply when you start trying to involve other people. I grew up with someone who attributed a seemingly endless list of objects with magical significance. We were all expected to acquire detailed knowledge of her boundless magical thinking and cater to it. If we didn't, there were fireworks. One day, in my early teens, making hot drinks in the kitchen, I was startled by a blood-curdling scream behind me. She'd noticed a couple of crossed knives on the kitchen counter, which magically signified an argument. Ironically, her nerve-shredding outbursts often provoked the very outcome she magically anticipated. Sometimes things get more physical. Many years ago, when my brother opened his umbrella to dry indoors, a guest caused a huge scene, trying to wrestle it from him and close it, based on the magical notion that opening it would bring bad luck. I'm pleased to report that this tough twerp was swiftly subdued by my brother. But this is where the trouble starts, when the magical thinker's comfort impinges on the comfort of others. It's here that we come to a crossroads, with paths that can lead to antagonism or veer away from it. Many magical thinkers do veer away from it. Some choose to listen to people's valid objections and rethink their ideas. Others choose to maintain their magical coping mechanisms, but keep them confined to their own lives without imposing on others. Both of these roads offer the possibility of peaceful coexistence in which no one's comfort eclipses another's. But they also require some effortful reflection. And unfortunately, our lazy brains often accelerate us straight ahead into conflict. As Robert Zions noted, emotional judgments are often made with great confidence, without rational processing. He made it.
I actually only see two of these paths as possible. I think most of us in this community went down the path of listen to objections and rethink. I think otherwise you go down the path of conflict. Confined thinking to one's own life, I think that's a fantasy that this is an atheist religious fantasy. That there's this magical way, there's this magical form of magical thinking that only affects the practitioner. It's super cash, okay? It's super lightweight, right? Because it's superficial. It doesn't affect any of their major decision making. Okay, they don't base financial decisions or medical decisions or relationship decisions or employment decisions based on their magical thinking. They limit it to very superficial things like pizza or Chinese, and they only practice it in their room. Okay, they only practice it in their bedroom. Okay, they don't influence and indoctrinate other people in the house. They don't, okay, and they definitely don't go out into the world and then insist that other people do this or try to suggest that other people live this way. I literally think that's a fantasy. I think it is technically and theoretically, philosophically plausible, okay? But I don't see it as manifestly possible with the realities of human nature. And so it almost feels like it's part of this whole picture because it provides this false magical out where instead of us realizing we're headed straight for conflict or we need to get really serious about people listening and, rethinking based on objections. But it seems like we have so many of these conversations and the comfortable out that we all want to take is, well, if they can find the magical thinking to their own life. I've never met anybody that does that. I haven't. But maybe the rest of y'all have better luck with unicorns than I do. What do you think, James? I might have lost James for a minute. All right, we'll keep going. Anybody else want to say anything? Stephanie's here.
Oh, sorry, I had myself on mute the whole time.
Oh, you had yourself on mute. Yeah, all right, go ahead.
So yeah, that's what I'm working on right now. In fact, nobody does that in real life. No sane people do, right? Like that's what I'm writing about right now for a project because I have a show tomorrow at Mike's channel.
Oh, okay.
And we're reviewing Rebecca's The Soul Guy.
The soul evolution thing. I was gonna think about doing something about that because he talks about evolution, right?
Yeah, he talks about evolution a little bit. It's not like a focus in the stream.
Oh, it's not. Okay. I didn't know. I didn't see it. Yeah. But you and Mike are gonna talk about it. Cool.
Yeah, so that's what I'm right about is the whole fantasy shit and people that can't differentiate fantasy from reality. And so I just pulled up a BBC article about it where study shows that religious children are less able to distinguish fantasy from reality even as they grow into adulthood. So
yeah, and I don't think there are any. See, here's the thing, right? We live in a capitalist society, right, James? And so most of these movements have to figure out a business model. I hate to say it, we're the same thing in fucking YouTube land, right? Like eventually you're like, I can't keep making 20 hours of content a week for free. I don't know if I told you guys, but they call these things part-time jobs at this point. So we're gonna have to work something out. Like it's just the nature of the beast, right? And so all of these woo-woo movements have to figure out a way to sell themselves. And so as soon as the marketing comes into play, they've got to give you something. It's sort of like the conversation we had about the chosen people, right? Where you have the Jewish apologists come through. Hey, chosen person just means we get all the rules, we get all the obligations. Yeah, it's kind of honorific, but really it's just a burden. And I'm like, bull fucking shit, right? Nobody follows extra rules without some benefit for their additional responsibilities, right? Mm-hmm. So it's going to be pretty hard. Like you could come up with some fantastic spiritual shit in your own, James, right? In your own room and, the cult of the saxophone or whatever the fuck you want to do. But it's going to be pretty hard for you to get me into the cult of the saxophone until you promise me some benefits.
The cult of the saxophone.
Yeah, like you're gonna have to tell me how it's gonna bring me hope, meaning, and purpose, or reduce my anxiety, or you turned to the saxophone last time you got a cold and it healed sooner, right? Like you're gonna have to sell me on some how it's gonna impact my life, right? And as soon as that happens, your shit has impacted the life of someone else, and you've automatically ensured that they buy into it having an impact in some non-superficial domain of their life, or else you wouldn't have been able to convince somebody to follow your woo-woo shit to begin with. So to me, it's philosophically possible, but I just don't think it really happens, and we almost need to just forget that. That's that whole I'd be cool with your thing if your thing never impacted anything outside your room. That's just not a real thing to me.
Right, yeah, it's not. We're all interconnected, and if somebody holds to, fantasy thinking, it's going to, they're going to share their fantasy thinking. And
Right.
if they influence somebody with that fantasy thinking, then now more people share in fantasy thinking. And the less people we have that are rooted in objective reasoning, the more people we have that are going off the rails, and they have no grounding in reality. Like,
yeah, even death, James. Death is fucking hard, right? And I'm even me, gang, even fucking heartless 24/7 365 anti-theist Jay thinks somebody on their deathbed is not the time to try to deconvert them. I've got my fucking boundaries, James. I just don't. What's the point? What's the fucking point? All right, they want to pray the rosary one last time, and shut them eyes. Let them at it, right? But that's the whole fucking deal. We need to learn how to deal with death. It's the one thing we all know we're all going to experience.
Right.
And I resent people for it because I want to learn how to cope with death. And I'm not capable of figuring out every goddamn thing in life. I need other people to figure some shit out for me. In the couple weeks I've been talking to Stephanie, who just popped out, I've literally learned a great deal. Stephanie, Lena, other people in our lives, like, I've learned so much about different issues, trans issues, people schooled me on issues that affect women differently. And I've changed my mind on a lot of things based on the influence of other people, right? And so I know if we stopped with this fucking excuse, we can't take people's faith from them because they really need it to deal with death. They really need to deal with death. Then we could actually learn how to cope with fucking death. And then literally I could get better tools and resources so I can cope with my own death better. And so I'm literally complaining because it's like everybody else refusing to come to grips with death is not helping me come to grips with death. I want to come to grips with death, and y'all got to stop with this Jesus nonsense so y'all come to grips with death so we can all learn how to come to grips with death together.
Right.
And so even if us, the secular, we're not finding secular solutions as quickly as we could because everybody's insistence on staying in bed and making the religious bullshit comfortable is holding us back, right? It's one thing to talk about all the medical advances that we've made in the progress of science that we've made in the face of religious pushback, right? But Lino put you off your lunch when put it to me like, think about all the scientific advances we'd already have if it wasn't in the way. And I was like, oh my God. Think how, so it's kind of the same thing here. Think of how much further along towards a healthy, common, societal, peaceful acceptance and ways to cope with death that we would be if not for insisting that we don't learn better for centuries after century after century.
Right.
Literally dealing with death no better today than they dealt with it thousands of years ago.
Right. I mean, we also need to progress as a society with our ability to emotionally regulate.
Right.
And that's a big problem because the entire field of psychiatry and psychology and everything related to that is so far behind where it needs to be, not just in the science front of investigation and discovery, but also in the lower realms of what trickles down to people's common knowledge and understanding of these things. And it's so far behind because of Christianity. Let's just call it what it is, because they have these stigmas for the longest time where everything in the domain of struggling with mental health, everything directly in that and attached to that was attributed to the forces of good and evil, the unseen spirit forces. And so if you were struggling with anything, severe depression, anxiety, hearing voices, fatigue, you just couldn't make sense of or get past, fog in your thought processes, whatever, it was all about spirituality. You were spiritually sick somehow. You were being assaulted by the devil or tested by God or some stupid shit. And so the answer was just go pray more and believe harder and whatever the fuck else. And if you if you don't get that shit corrected soon, it's your own damn fault. Now you're a spiritual leper and a danger to others around you because the demons were working through you. And so we weren't looking for people in general, weren't looking for real answers to these questions. So the manpower
wow.
And so because we weren't, not only we still stuck with the stigma about mental illness and all that entails, which is severely consequential, but we also are several generations behind the ball of investigation, right? And because because we're so far behind in our investigations, because they kept saying there's nothing to investigate,
right?
That means that we have a society that people aren't seeking the help that they need, and the ones that are getting a lower standard of care than they would have gotten.
Absolutely.
Because the field is limited in what it can provide to people.
Absolutely.
We're still trying to understand mental health.
Right.
And so along with all of that is everything that we're talking about here. And so you know, people's ability to emotionally regulate is in large part a factor of understanding how that works, which most people don't have a good understanding, and nobody has a great understanding of it, because Christianity held us back. And so in this world where people aren't emotionally regulating well because they don't understand it, and because they also were raised by parents who didn't understand it, and so that crippled our ability to function in the world emotionally and to regulate, because parents also couldn't benefit from education they didn't have access to, and so while all of that's happening, it's a catch-22. No, religion's benefiting from all of that because all these emotions.
So it perpetuates. You know, they obstructed the process, and now they benefit from continued obstruction.
They're arsonists who are selling afterlife.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Arsonists selling afterlife insurance. Facts. I don't know why I didn't put live on YouTube up here or something. All right, so you touched on another thing. Oh, fuck, James, what did you say right before the last thing you said? God damn it.
About people not regulating, and part of the problem is because they don't know how, and part of the problem because their parents didn't know how.
Yes. I wanted to ask you about that because you said their parents can't make use of education they didn't have. Part of my compassion fatigue is the lack of education of previous generations in our family. So the great irony is and I don't know Maya, I don't know if Maya's near Mike, but other people speak this. I know especially this is true in communities of color. I don't know what the experience is in other communities, but I imagine it's the same, to where upwardly mobile families put so much emphasis on school and education because it is the path to a better future. But then the great irony is that education comes with an intellectual growth that makes you intellectually incompatible with the very same family that supported and made sacrifices for your education. And so you feel this weird tension where they're the people that are going to be the most made uncomfortable by me living my new truth. But ironically, me living my new truth is the payoff for the education they sacrificed for.
Isn't that crazy? They had no idea that they were helping support an endeavor that was going to create a divide between you. They were helping you outgrow your cultural paradigm with knowledge, with wisdom, with understanding of the world and your place within it, because they were so sure they had it all figured out that they didn't think that their education posed a risk. Right? No,
100%.
There are some people. So this is ironically a mistake that like jihadist Muslims and Sharia law countries don't make when it comes to education for young girls and women. They goddamn well know that if you let them get an education, it's going to cause them a problem later. And so they don't want them anywhere near a book or a school. Right. But your parents, Your parents, ironically, not understanding something very basic that even Islamic extremists understand. If you go out and get that education, you're going to end up outgrowing their paradigm. You're going to end up at odds with it, and now you've got a problem.
Man, life is deep, bro.
Yeah, life is deep.
As Robert Zions noted, emotional judgments are often made with great confidence, without rational processing. He also noted that once those judgments are made, we often defend them with rationalizations. This might feel like rational processing, but its goal is very different. Rational processing looks for answers. Rationalization looks for justifications. It's another kind of keyhole thinking. We hunt for plausible-sounding arguments in favor of our emotional judgments, and stop when we find them, blocking out valid arguments against. When we try to force our magical coping mechanisms on others, it would be great if the pushback we receive prompted some reflection on our part. Instead, we often just build walls of fallacious rationalizations to justify our imposition. In our efforts to fend off critics, we misattribute them with imaginary malicious motives, allowing us to personally attack them without compunction. We might even claim their objections are a sign that they're under the thrall of magical beings, invalidating their autonomy. Convinced of the truth of our magical coping mechanism, we rationalize that it's okay to gag our critics by making the questioning of our magical thinking a social taboo. We rationalize the abuse of child indoctrination, forcing powerless, unsuspecting children to accept our illusions as indisputable truth. This abuse is passed down the generations. We rationalize that we're justified in punishing disbelief with a range of penalties up to and including state-sanctioned murder.
And I want to be clear about this, man, because a lot of times when we get in these conversations about religion and we get it lined up, we don't hit them with that haymaker. Let me hit them with that haymaker, yo. These motherfuckers that are out here gaslighting us on our journey, they are interfering with our ability to reverse generational curses.
Damn, that's an important point.
You know what I'm talking about, James? You ain't just trying to interfere with my grind to 1,000 subs. You're an asshole for doing that, by the way. But you know what I'm saying? Like, it's really like, bro, I'm trying to make sure the future of my family doesn't look like the slave mentality I was born into. And they want to cut that off at the pass. How dare you?
Right. At the same time, we got how many parents and grandparents in a similar situation? How many grandkids in a similar situation? Hundreds, thousands, millions, maybe across the globe, where the prior generation holding them back, right?
Absolutely.
And cumulatively holding an entire people back.
100%. 100%. I remember this conversation I had with my mother. May have told us before. We were watching some sort of NASA special. We were up in the upper room in her old house, and I was just watching some TV, right? And she just came in to chill, chat for a little bit while she was doing whatever. And I'm watching this kind of science program, and my mom really looked at me, and it was a really sweet moment. She said, "I really envy you," right? Because the woman that was talking was like some sort of NASA planetary scientist, right? But she was a black woman, right? And my mom was like, "You did something that was really," at this point I was at Penn State, so I was getting my master's in anthropology or whatever. She was like, I just started grad school. She was like, you did something that was really about your intellectual pursuits, right? Like you pursued, she was basically relating my story to the woman on TV. Like, y'all did your thing. Like, you found the topic or the subject that interests you and you pursued that in scholarship, right? And she was saying she wished she did something like that. Because what my mom really did was what so many people did that when her generation was smart. It was get your black ass up out the hood. So you had to go the corporate route. You went the route of what was going to pay you so you could get a high-paying job and leave, right? It wasn't about your intellectual growth, right? Your intellect. Let me get shit about your intellect, bitch. You need to pay these bills, right?
Right.
And I really took that, you know, because it was a sweet moment, and you have meaningful conversations in your relationship with your parents where they say real shit to you that you need to keep with you, right? But I remember thinking to myself, and I didn't say it to her, but I remember thinking immediately to myself, she never had a chance.
Right.
She never had a chance because her parents were so directly religious. There's no way she could have came home talking about her love of planetary science or evolution or biology. No. So it was really sweet. And in that moment, we both recognized the gulf between our generational experience, one generation. But that was because my grandparents, to your point, didn't know that either, right? And they made the mistake of supporting her education, and she got me out. And then, you know, she made the mistake of encouraging me or whatever, not knowing. But so many people, especially in communities of color, have still not gone through that process. And certainly not in the case of course of two generations. You know, we're still in a situation where today babies are being born into families where nobody's even encouraged to consider going to college because that's only some shit white people and uppity Negroes do to begin with.
Right.
And so again, the few of us that have figured out enough to be able to point a way out for the rest of us, it's like they're literally running interference on that shit. Because again, they don't care what's really at stake for people.
Right.
They don't give a shit. Because again, James, to your point, we're just characters in their fucking story.
Yep.
And in their stories, we some insignificant side-ass characters. So they don't give a fuck about the side characters in our story. Oh, fuck out of here. For them to think 2 or 3 degrees of separation in our networks, fuck out of here, bro. We're extras as it is, dog. Extras ain't got backstories.
Right.
Children who never got the choice not to join never get the choice to leave. Each generation shackles the mind of the next in inescapable service to the magical coping mechanism of a long-dead ancestor. Not content with earthly punishments, we invent magical dangers. We torment our imaginations with new punishments of incomprehensible scale. Realms of perpetual torture, where bodies are boiled, burned, and stripped of flesh, then restored, only to experience the same all over again, forever. We rationalize this psychopathic sadism by calling it justice. By inventing these realms, we create unrivaled nightmares, demanding unprecedented levels of comfort. Let's reflect on the bizarre corner we've just painted ourselves into. We now have to comfort ourselves against a magical danger that we dreamt up to comfort ourselves against real danger.
This is what was hitting me in that conversation, and I'm so glad I brought us that hypothetical back to this stream, in addition to yesterday's. But that's the thing, right? The person who evangelizes to you, proselytizes you, is justified because they are truly afraid of magical danger, right? They're truly afraid of a fantastic horror. And you're not allowed to try to liberate them from that very real harm, because the process of telling them the truth is perceived as somehow an even greater offense to them than the magical fucking danger that caused this shit to begin with.
Yeah. Right. So here we are worried about their well-being because of all this, but we're wrong if we have that as a motivation to try to catch them up to speed.
Right. Right. They might have an uncomfortable conversation, so let them go off and worry about spending the rest of their life in hell.
Right.
Now don't be rude, gang.
Even if the real danger subsides, we're now stuck in a self-reinforcing danger-comfort cycle of our own making.
Mm-hmm.
Even superficially positive elements of a magical coping mechanism can create conflict. The promise of a members-only magical afterlife paradise motivates us to impose ourselves on others, especially loved ones, in the belief we're saving them. When our loved ones don't comply, we might blame them for our distress. If we stepped back from our rationalizations, we might realize we're the ones causing the distress. We're operating a one-way system, expecting to be heard, but declining to listen, expecting our needs to be met, but not giving a thought to anyone else's. These one-way systems tend to end one way, in pain and ignorance. Our freedom to cope in our own way with life's ordeals ends when our coping mechanisms become an added ordeal for other people to cope with. At that point, it's no longer just a source of comfort for the individual, but a source of oppression for the people around them. Then, it's time for pushback. So long as any group continues to rationalize behavior that obstructs and violates the liberties and entitlements of others, conflict remains inevitable. And no lazy emotional shortcuts will magic it away. Ex-theists who speak out against religious abuse have often gone through sustained periods of debilitating overload to finally break free of their indoctrination. In abusive religious groups, the gap between comfort and overload is wafer thin. Step outside the confines of the pre-designated comfort area and you're the enemy. It can be a grueling process, pushing through the wall of rationalizations they were often born behind, and building a space in between these extremes where growth feels manageable. And, even after this, ex-theists from some of the more extreme groups face continuing overload when they share their stories, working to make an easier departure for others who are still trapped inside. For their efforts, they're relentlessly hounded, marginalized, and censored. In some countries, killed. The contrast between this genuine, risk-taking compassion and the artificial product used in emotional blackmail couldn't be clearer. Humans have found many ways of coping with life's challenges. A final one worth mentioning is, of course, rational, effortful thinking. With this strategy, we can directly address many of the ordeals in life that we fend off with mood-altering substances and magical thinking. We can reduce uncertainty through disciplined investigation. We can overcome complex dangers by methodically analyzing their nature and creating effective countermeasures. Mindful reflection can also help us come to terms with areas we can't control, to work through false hope, and refocus our attention onto more productive areas. Effortful thinking helps us to change the things we can change and to accept the things we can't. Think what could happen if we used it just a little more often. Humans often rely on snap, instinctive, simplistic emotional judgments. That's fine if you're choosing a shirt, not if you're processing complex situations with significant consequences. Emotional blackmail urges us to take mental shortcuts that work against us. Notice when you're being directed to look with emotional eyes at just one part of the picture. Get into the habit of widening the aperture. Don't be rushed. Take your sweet time. Getting comfortable with difficult feelings helps us move away from enabling unhealthy behavior and towards compassion that encourages health and growth. If some people choose sickness and stagnation, we have no obligation to join them. Compassion involves thinking about others as well as ourselves, not instead of. Rationalizations might have the feel of rational processing, but their single-minded focus is justification, not investigation. Some emotional blackmailers are amenable to rational reflection. Others, in the grip of powerful rationalizations, might be beyond reasonable reach. Every attempt to restore clarity just gets clouded over. It's important not to get sidetracked into endless, unproductive exchanges. Thankfully, it only takes one rational party to end emotional blackmail. I'd like to end with some hypotheticals. How would you respond to the following situations? A religious leader justifies child indoctrination on the grounds that his group is entitled to ensure the survival of its beliefs.
Train up a child in the way they should go, and they shall not depart from it. It's funny that Christians are constantly complaining about grooming, yet they insist on being allowed to groom people. They are the most indoctrinated, all about starting with the rituals literally while you're soft in the head, baptizing babies and fucking circumcision and all this other shit. It's wild. And then even gender roles, right? They start super early with preparing little boys and little girls to be little husbands and little wives, and and then they just call everybody else groomers. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
It's pretty gross. Pretty gross.
A mother tells her offspring they have to make allowances for their father. He hasn't got their emotional control. If you can identify the problems with these, you're already resisting emotional blackmail.
All right, so James, what do you think about these scenarios? So for the first one, indoctrinating children is fine. My group is entitled to ensure the survival of its beliefs. I'm like, indoctrinating children is not fine because the child is not old enough to think for themselves, and you're abusing your caretaking position in the child's life. And I don't give a fuck that your group needs to ensure the survival of its disbeliefs. It probably says something problematic about whatever you're trying to ensure, if it depends on indoctrinating children. Like, it's probably not something that should go on if you ain't got a better,
if you have a better foundation.
If you ain't got a better foundation than that, yeah.
Yeah, it's like I didn't need to indoctrinate my children into thinking that it's wrong to go around randomly killing people. I just had to help them understand cause and effect and consequence and compassion and things like that.
Right.
And the laws of our society, they figure it out pretty easy, right?
Yeah. And whatever, I was going to say also, whatever profession they go into is happy to wait till they get to school and figure out what they want to do and pursue classes and decide what they're good at.
Right.
Lawyers aren't sweating. We need to grab them while they're 4 to make sure they become attorneys. We need to grab them while they're...
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
What is that shit? And the whole thing doesn't make sense anyway, because it's like in a confession when they talk like that. It's a confession that they know that if they do not brainwash a child, that their religious beliefs will not endure. In other words, they know there's no God at the helm.
Wow. Yeah. All right. And then number 2, you have to make allowances for your father. He hasn't got your emotional control. That's just basically victim blaming. He needs to, his responsibility as the parent is to be the one demonstrating the emotional control. And that is literally the definition of assigning to a child adult problems.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What else you got for that one?
Hey, Jeff, can I say something?
Of course, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the first one, indoctrinating children,
Yeah.
is fine. I have no problem with that if what you're indoctrinating them, if what you're teaching them is can be shown to be true, if you have evidence that it's true. You know,
Sure, and I think that's almost why we
religion.
don't use. That's why we probably don't use indoctrinating when that's the case. But yeah, I do think that's an important distinction. Like if you teach your child woodworking at a young age or chemistry,
exactly.
nobody's gonna think you're an abusive parent for that. Yeah.
Right. So the definition of indoctrination is the process of teaching a person or group to accept a set of beliefs uncritically. That's indoctrination.
Oh,
yes.
I thought it meant just to teach.
Yeah. Okay. So uncritically. Yeah.
No,
right.
the archaic form of the word, not used currently, but the archaic form was just to teach.
Got you. Yeah, that's very interesting. And it's also really powerful. I need to remember that, right, James? Because that's even a defense when like they're saying that like we indoctrinate children with science and evolution, right? For the most part, decent science teachers don't, because we don't teach them to accept them uncritically. Like we actually teach them to like be critical. We're like, yeah, you shouldn't accept this because I said it. You should. I'm going to show you how to read a paper critically, and then from now on, you read papers, including this one, critically, including this one.
Teaching them the scientific method, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right. That's not. Yeah, you're not teaching them to accept anything uncritically. You're teaching them how to be critical. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I needed that little piece of that indoctrinating definition to help draw that distinction. So yeah, do y'all have anything else on the second one?
Joel, did you want to say something about it?
No, I think Jay nailed it on the head. That it's the father is responsible for his emotional control. That is that is the definition of victim blaming.
Right, and it's
it
also
falls on the child. That's crazy.
Right, and it's also creating a bubble or perpetuating a bubble around the father to prevent him from the pain of growing as a person, as a human being.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so how long is that bubble? That bubble's probably been there. He's probably raised in that bubble. Choose a wife based on who would keep that bubble going. So he never had to grow into an accountable human being. And now here he is older. And it's not like it's not like he's got dementia or anything. He still can learn and grow. But here his wife is protecting him from it. Don't ask him to grow. That might be uncomfortable for him.
Right. Yeah, and I'm sure I'm sure that's not an easy position for her to be in, because I'm sure, like you said, he picked somebody based on probably having a certain personality type, and then he's probably been building that expectation, unbeknownst to her, into their parenting style and decisions and in the whole 9 yards, and so she probably don't realize how deep it goes, Yeah, that's fantastic insight. Does anybody else that's here with us and Gather want to add anything or speak about anything that we've been talking about? The Gather chat's actually been on fire, as always. I really like the fact that even in Gather that we have the, our own text chat where people are free to just talk to each other and don't have to worry about the trolls. It's kind of nice. But I don't know if Maya or Carrie-Ann or anybody or Joel had anything else to say. You see love? No big deal if not.
So for me, this is what it means to be an adult. This is key to what it means to be an adult, is to become someone that accepts responsibility for social equity, for socially equitable behavior, where you are fully accountable and you hold yourself to every standard you hold other people to.
Wow.
You don't make exceptions. You don't make excuses. You don't say, well, I had a hard life. None of that shit. Because if you can't get that far in life to adopt that mentality and stand by it predictably, reliably, and purposefully. If you can't get there, then you're not an adult yet.
Yeah. No, this is really weird, and a great point. And I think that I guess what I want to say is weird is that it feels like in this community where we're kind of learning how to adult intentionally together, because at least for me, I think a lot of us, myself included, were restricted in our ability to grow, and I have always felt behind schedule in terms of social and emotional development, always. Matter of fact, I feel really fortunate for my academic abilities, because I think they help compensate in a way, not completely, but Lord, I definitely helped. I can't imagine. I can't imagine if I had to be, not successful there, and then just socially and emotionally awkward with very little to offer in compensation for. But yeah, it sucks. I mean, I think it's even why I'm not sure. I don't even know if I'm marriageable. Like I just don't feel like my emotional maturity path feels like it will cross the threshold, in a reasonable time frame.
I feel you. Right. I mean, I struggle. I won't lie. I struggle. I slip up. I fail the standards that I set for myself. But I don't hold other people to a higher standard than I hold for myself.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's I think a really important thing to emphasize.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, James.
So I don't excuse myself from it. I recognize that I fail rather than saying it's not applicable because I'm not held to a standard. Like, I am held to a standard. I fail the standard, but I damn well try. And every time I fail, I don't feel like I need to join a religion to get ritually cleansed through blood magic for my failure. Instead, I take responsibility for that, and I say, I'm going to be better tomorrow. I'm going to keep struggling with this because I owe it to myself and everyone around me to be that better person.
Yes.
And the apologies aren't good enough. I have to hold myself accountable.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I really appreciate that we're doing that in this community and all trying to get better. And I really admire us for being on the road together. And Jay, shit, better late than never, man. Go ahead, Joel.
I think your emotional maturity would be a lot higher than a lot of people that are getting married today. So if I were you,
that's crazy. About that, I appreciate that.
I mean,
which is exactly why he doesn't want to get married, because he knows better. That's the irony. You become emotionally mature enough to get married, you realize you shouldn't get married.
Well, yeah, it's sort of like education, right? Like the more you learn, the more you realize you need to learn, right? And so the funny thing is, on a good day, I'm appreciative of having expertise in the field, but the truth is I don't really feel like an expert in my field. And that's not a bad thing to me. It just means the more I learned about my field, the more I realized it's too huge. Nobody knows all of it. And, there are that was one thing my advisor reminded me of. He had his PhD and he had spent his entire life in the field and he had done all the things you could accomplish, right? And he would always tell me, you got to remember about your research, you're the world's leading expert in whatever it is you're doing. You know more about that little corner of the world than anybody. Like, nobody knows your shit the way you do, right? And that's pretty cool. But you realize that's such a small part of a bigger thing, and nobody's smart enough to really know the bigger thing. And the more you know, the more you realize that if you spend 50 years as a microbiologist, you realize just how little you know about plants, because you spent 50 years adjacent to plant people. Damn, I'm all 50 years, y'all keep blowing my mind with all this shit about plants. I realize I don't know, right? But to outsiders, they go, "Oh, you got a PhD in biology. You must know about plants and animals." You're like, "No, I know about rocks. What do I don't know about? Anything that's not rocks." So, and even that, I know about this very particular one class of rock with this very particular, right, with this one particular that's what real life is like. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's the same thing with like other areas of life that are not just our field or our expertise. It's like the more you know about relationships, the more you're like, holy shit, how does anybody think they are enough human to human with other people? Like, why do people even think we should do it? Like, I think of this all the time about my dog. Like, why do I have a dog? I shouldn't have a dog. Nobody should trust most people with another living animal, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not like a fucking, there's like those dog nuts that are just like, I don't know, they fucking take their dog to the dog hotel and the dog park 14 times a week with they doggy dates and all of that type of shit. And then you have those like bona fide vets and people like that. I'm just like some dude with a dog. The main thing Sam loves about being with me is that he pretty much can do whatever the fuck he wants because I don't care. So he appreciates the freedom.
You also have the assisting dogs, the halt dogs.
Yeah, like the fucking
hungry, angry,
helper.
lonely, tired dogs, that will stop you, like if you're depressed or something.
Yeah.
They kind of take care of you. You take care of them.
Absolutely.
They'll take care of you.
But I do sometimes feel like I really should not be responsible for another living organism because it's so much responsibility.
Yeah. What I think is scary about being in your position, Jay, is, being a research scientist is that you could come up with a hypothesis, in your small niche in your field of science. You could come up with a hypothesis and spend most of your career working on it, and it can be wrong,
Yes.
which would advance science,
Yes.
but it would still be heartbreaking,
Yes.
I mean,
absolutely.
The stuff that turns out wrong still advances us forward, but it's got to be heartbreaking as well.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, I don't worry too much about it too, though, because it's a job, right? It's weird too because I mean, like, you still got
scientists
paid,
in goblet mode,
right?
man.
You still got paid. You still, what I mean? You still got to do your thing. Like, I don't.
We can't have our scientists quiet quitting though, man.
Yeah, no, it's true. It really is true. It really is true. But that's funny. I like to think that helps though, balance it out, right? Because you teach and stuff.
Yeah.
So hopefully you teach and you're a good teacher. And even if your research turns out to have been wrong, at least hopefully one of your students corrects it or something. Yeah. But yeah, that's fucking true. All right, gang, let's shoot this thing in the head so we can watch an episode of The Wire or something before I have to go to bed for tomorrow's shows. So look, we'll head to the island. We'll be at the beach overnight. It's been super fun. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment, and let your friends and people on the internet know we're out here. AR, man, hit us with a drum solo, baby. Yeah, that's right. It's fucking badass. All right, gang, in the name of the Darwin, the Dawkins, and the Christopher Hitchens, science bless y'all. Also, y'all, look, I'm going to tell y'all this real quick, man. The compound's been invaded again, man. And this time, it's the fucking unidentified flying objects. You gotta get in here, gang, man. It isn't Trump's documents. It isn't Joe Biden's. It isn't Joe Biden's documents. It's the UFOs, man. Now the FBI said there's 14 unidentified flying objects that have been found in our gather compound, man. Y'all gotta get up in here and find the UFOs, gang. All right, we'll see y'all tomorrow. Poof.
All right.
Why she wanna leave me alone? Saying all I do is wrong. No rights when they been left turns. Playing that she gotta let it burn. Saying that the hell's not a home. Sunshine cause you heard it all before. Sometimes she don't wanna be alone. Most times she don't want me gone. She don't know I try my all. She don't know I sprung in the sun, but I'm going in the winter, so we good to the fall. Remember how I told you I get it and I win. Now I'm got it, you ain't answer my call. Wonder if I've been moving too strong. Maybe I just been moving too balls. She tryna slide, we smoking za. Stop acting shy, cause you a demon when I get between your thighs, girl. You like my rib, you know I need you by my side, girl. It's time to roll. She tryna ride, we smoking. Stop acting shy, cause you a demon when I get between your thighs, girl. You like my rib, you know I need you by my side, girl.
We smoking that side, I'm tryna get high. She said that she not ready for love, stop wasting my time. I got demons in my closet, I can't hide. I did all my exes wrong, they wish I died. Damn, I tried. They won't believe me when I say this. Oh my God, what a blessing. Hello Phoenix, that's my twin. I told these hoes they won't get my heart again, not again. Cause they went missing when I needed just a friend. They went missing, yeah, they all went missing. They don't want no smoke, they hit the blunt and started tripping. My daughter about to be 5, I ain't got no time to be bitching. I'm still reminiscing, we ain't had no food in the kitchen. I gotta go and stack. I'm waiting, know I'm heading, but I'm going out. I hit the side, now your sack feel like I'm throwing up. And I just took another perk, cause one wasn't enough. Yeah.
It's time to roll. She tryna slide, we smoking za. Stop acting shy, cause you a demon when I get between your thighs, girl. You like my rib, you know I need you by my side, girl. It's time to roll. She tryna ride, we smoking. Stop acting shy, cause you a demon when I get between your thighs, girl. You like my rib, you know I need you by my side, girl. It's time to roll. She tryna slide, we smoking za. Stop acting shy, cause you a demon when I get between your thighs, girl. You like my rib, you know I need you by my side, girl. It's time to roll. She tryna ride, we smoking. Stop acting shy, cause you a demon when I get between your thighs, girl. You like my rib, you know I need you by my side, girl. She don't know I tried my all. She don't know I sprung in the sun, but I'm going in the winter, so we good to the fall. Remember how I told you I get it and I win, now I'm got it, you ain't answering my call. Wonder if I've been moving too strong. Maybe I just been moving too boss. Really hate when the feeling get lost. Nowadays she just dodge my calls. In the game throwing laws like Paul. Young legend Miss John like Wall. And I wish you never met like Call. Dick game lay it down like law. Made plans but you canceled them all. I was just trying to splurge in the mall. Now I'm home stacking bread till you call. It's time to roll. She tryna slide, we smoking za. Stop acting shy, cause you a demon when I get between your thighs, girl. You like my rib, you know I need you by my side, girl. It's time to roll. She tryna ride, we smoking. Stop acting shy, cause you a demon when I get between your thighs, girl. You like my rib, you know I need you by my side, girl.
We smoking that side, I'm tryna get high. She said that she not ready for love, stop wasting my time. I got demons in my closet, I can't hide. I did all my exes wrong, they wish I died. Damn, I tried. They won't believe me when I say this. Oh my God, what a blessing. Hello Phoenix, that's my twin. I told these hoes they won't get my heart again, not again. Cause they went missing when I needed just a friend. They went missing, yeah, they all went missing. They don't want no smoke, they hit the blunt and started tripping. My daughter about to be 5, I ain't got no time to be bitching. I'm still reminiscing, we ain't had no
fly, we smoking out.